Welcome to COVID compromised hair month.
Beautiful. What are you talking about?
Oh, wow. I do have a hair appointment on Friday.
Yeah. You always look fabulous.
Well, I watched it this morning.
Can
That
Just for
helps.
y'all.
you see me?
Good.
I can.
Good. Okay.
I can see you, Janice.
Okay. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, your hair looks good, by the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I watched it this morning, that's why.
This is where mine is.
All right, I'm going to mute everybody for a second while I introduce Tamara, and we'll go ahead and get started. And there'll be people who kind of are popping in, I'm sure, and that's fine. We're used to that. So let me see if there's anything that I need to do. It is being recorded, just to let everyone know, so I can share this afterwards. And chat. Everybody okay with me sharing this recording afterwards?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If you're not, I can just share the MP3 file, which wouldn't have all of our faces on there. So either way is fine. So we'll talk for I'll talk with Tamara and Lloyd for about 45 minutes or so, and then leave 15 to 10 minutes for chat and questions and just basic connection, because God knows we all need that. And I'm just going to introduce myself first, because not everybody knows me. And my name is Ann Moss Rogers, and I run a blog called Emotionally Naked. I am a national public speaker on the subjects of mental health, suicide, and grief. And I do a lot on coping strategies with high school students. I am author of the book Diary of a Broken Mind, and just signed a contract to write a book for educators to spot suicide in teens and young adults. So I'm excited about that.
All right.
Yay. And these are my friends, Tamara and Lloyd Braswell. And I met Tamara in the way a lot of grieving mothers meet each other. I'd lost my son, Charles, to suicide. And not long after that, I'd say, was it a year, Tamara?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
She lost her son, Logan. And I couldn't believe all the similarities. And one of being that they lived in the same neighborhood, and the second was that they both went to Wasatch Academy in Utah, which was pretty surprising. That's a really small boarding school in Utah, and not that many people know about it. And then I met Lloyd when he wrote something for the site, and we went out and had lunch. And both of them wrote for the website. And then they met each other, but I'm not going to tell that story because but I'll interject some things. So I'm going to hand it over to Tamara and Lloyd Braswell. Tamara works for Colorado Department of Transportation, and she was with VDOT here in Virginia before that position. And Lloyd Braswell was Baptist minister at, what's the name of your church?
Chester Baptist.
Chester Baptist, and moved out to be with his new bride and is looking for new opportunities when COVID hit.
Right.
So
Yeah.
tell us more about how the sparks flew and how it all got started.
Okay, where do you want to start?
Well, okay, I can start. I think I did meet Ann shortly after Logan died. She reached out to me and sent me a sympathy card after Logan died, which was he died in a car crash in July of 22nd, 2016. And of all the sympathy cards I got, and I got some wonderful ones, beautiful ones, hers really hit me. It struck me, and I didn't know her. And so I thought, gosh, I need help. And in my you know, I thought I knew that I was going to be in grief forever, but I wanted a way to deal with it. I was looking for sort of a quick fix out of my pain, which didn't happen. But I called Ann and we got together. We immediately connected, and she was one of those lights along my trail. Because when something like that happens to you, it's just horrible. You feel, I mean, it's beyond feeling alone. Feeling alone is not a big deal compared to losing your child. So she was the first flicker of light on the trail, and gave me some hope. And I certainly didn't believe in it at that time. And to fast forward, I started writing for her, and Lloyd, you wrote one article, and Lloyd was checking out the Emotionally Naked blog, and he saw my story and then reached out to me over Facebook, which I didn't know him. I thought he was one of Ann's friends, a suicide prevention advocate. Saw that he was a pastor. That was about it. Didn't pay much attention beyond that, until he puts these really great posts on his Facebook, very, very nice inspirational posts. But he put one up that was just, I didn't really agree with. It was like, oh, you know, good things can come out of bad things. And I thought, good Lord, you know, I mean, where is this guy from? And so I generally don't leave comments, but I did on that one, just pretty much very nicely, just telling him his head was in the clouds. He didn't know what he was talking about. But then he immediately private messaged me and told me his story, in which you want to tell them briefly.
Yeah, so my background is I have 4 children. 2 have died and 2 are still living. My daughter was born with special needs in 1994. Spent her first 3 months in the hospital, and then she only lived 13 and a half months. And she died in 95. My son Matthew died by suicide about 10 years ago, in 2009, or 2010 rather. And you know, after that, my focus had been I was trying to just go on with life, and a lot of my issues, my struggles were trying to be there for the rest of my family. After Matthew died, I've got a son that's a year and a half younger. He had all sorts of struggles, and I was trying to be there for him and just trying to keep life going and ministry going, trying to be there at church and ministering at church. You know, a lot of my support came through, I have a Baptist pastor or a pastor's group in North Carolina that we meet on a regular basis, and they became a real strong support group for me. I saw a counselor, I have a spiritual director, and a spiritual director is someone you meet with monthly, with basically the goal of saying, you know, this is what's happening in my life and how is God working in this situation. And then I had some friends that had told me about Ann Moss, and she was looking for someone to write for a blog. And I wrote, you know, kind of shared our family struggles on her blog. I started reading it, and then Tamara and I met, and she, when she posted, you know, questioning, saying, she told me about all these tragedies in her life, from a husband that died by suicide, her son that died, her sister that died in fire. And she said, you know, I just believe that God, you know, there's darkness and God meets us in the darkness. And when she said that, I thought, I agree with that, but, you know, I thought like there's more to it than that. And that she was just trying to just respond to me, because she's like, what he's saying is just BS, basically. And I reached out to her, and it just drew me to her. And I just reached out and I said, you know, I've had a lot of tragedies in my life too. And my final statement is, life can suck, but God is good.
Yeah, so that's how it started. So we started to message back and forth, call a little bit every now and then we met a number of months, weeks, whatever, after we first started that dialogue. But we're in Denver, and he lived in Chester, so it wasn't like
Chester's just outside of Richmond.
Yeah, like we could just kind of go down the street and have lunch. So so I have still good friends, Ann Moss being one of them, that I visit from time to time. So during one of my visits back to Virginia, we decided to meet up, you know, because we had been, we called a few times, and we went back and forth on text messaging. And so that pretty much did it. There was an immediate spark. There was a definite
And
immediate spark. we
I
met.
was witness to that. I can tell you, I was standing there and my husband was standing there, and the two of them met in person for the first time. And I mean, I was just like, should we leave the room? You know, they weren't touching, they weren't really that close to each other, but it was like this magnetism. I thought, I'm in the middle, I got to get out of the way because they're just gonna fuse.
Oh,
And then
Yeah.
my husband leans over and he goes, oh my God, do you feel what I feel? And I said, yes. I said, the room is warm.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
and the thing about it too is when we first connected, we were just connecting as friends, and neither of us were looking for anything more than that. And we're just two bereaved parents that were just kind of reaching out to each other, and we had that in common, and we could share about our losses and our pain, and then we just got we talked on a regular basis, and so by the time we met, we felt like we really knew each other.
Mhm.
And then from that things grew a lot deeper.
Yeah, they did, and I certainly wasn't. In fact, that part of my life, I went through this. I mean, it was I had a prior marriage and ended that. It just wasn't well. Also, we were living so far apart too. My former husband, and it just I didn't want to be with anybody. I was in this solitude kind of way of life. I even moved nearly 2,000 miles away from all my family. I mean, well, my family had all of them had just about passed away, but from my friends and everything. My brother lives out here, close to Denver. I had a job to go to, but I always considered Colorado my second home, so it wasn't exactly moving here and not knowing anything about it. I lived here many years before, but I wanted to be here because of the environment out here, the mountains. It was just kind of my relationship was with the environment. It wasn't that's what it was. And I'd spent a whole entire summer hiking and doing all sorts of stuff by myself out here. And that's what I wanted, because I felt like nobody really could get me or understand me. And I just didn't want to deal with the trivialities of people at that time. So when Lloyd came along, he understood, and we were able to. I guess the main thing with him is I pretty much gave up on hope. I wasn't interested in it anymore. And yet, the premise of Lloyd and his preaching, and as a pastor, the main thing that he focuses on is there's hope. There's hope in anything. And so he has helped me to come around with that, and still kind of helping me to see where God is in all of this. In fact, we wrote an article together as where was God when my child died? And so he's helped me to think through some of those things and think through them differently.
Yeah, but Tamara, what I'd like to know from you, what I sense from you, like Lloyd was kind of all in, and it was you that was more resistant to this. And I want to know what it was that finally allowed you to give yourself permission to go in this direction. Because she's telling me on the sofa one night, she's saying, I just can't see myself. I'm never going to be married to a Baptist minister. It's just not going to happen. And I'm sitting there in my head like, you are so far gone, girl, from the moment you said hello. And I just kind of let it sit because I thought, and I remember I just put one little tidbit in there to kind of marinate. And I said, you might want to see where this leads. And then I backed off because she was in this mode of being adamant that they were never going to have a relationship. And I just didn't see how to pull these two magnets apart.
Well, first of all, we lived far apart, and Lloyd was entrenched in his life in Virginia, and I was in mine, and I thought, how in the world is this going to work? I thought maybe if we lived in the same city, it might be, we would see each other, but I kind of was sort of, that first weekend that I met Lloyd, and I was with you, Ann. In fact, I was staying with Ann Moss that weekend. It was sort of, I did give myself the permission to have fun. And I said, well, for these 2 days, I'm going to have fun, and that's okay. I truly lived in the moment. I knew it was going to be all over by the time I got on the plane and headed back west, but I just couldn't see it going beyond that. I just could not even imagine seeing. And I really didn't want it to at that point. But we continued to talk, and things continue to evolve. And even after, I still kind of put the brakes on it for a little while. We still talked, but like for about 3 months or so, there was no traveling back and forth. Maybe two, or in a 3 or 4 month period, we saw each other one time, I think. But then once we decided to be with each other, we saw each other about every month, every 3 weeks or so, until we got married and he moved out here.
What was that 3 months like, Lloyd?
I mean, it was good that we're talking every day, but it was, and for me, it was, we'll just take the next step and see where it goes. We don't have to decide everything. And I mean, I definitely, when this began, I didn't see myself quitting my church, getting married and moving across country.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the stories of the other, I don't see any men on the call, but the other ladies who are on the call, I guess, and Lloyd and I were talking about, well, what's the one thing that they might be interested in?
There is a dude, by the way, Jeff is on.
Oh,
Okay.
Jeff is
Hi,
on. I
Jeff.
just can't see him. Okay. It's, if you've, and I guess I would guess that they've all gone through some major loss. I have no advice for anybody. I'm the worst person to seek advice from, but I could only just tell you what my experience has been. And for me, there's like, maybe you guys can get this, but like my Logan, my son, he was 19. There was my life before Logan, and then there was my life after Logan. It's kind of like before and after. And so I tell you what, Lloyd had this done for me. I don't know if you can see it. That's Logan right there.
Oh,
Done of him right there. He died. He was 19 years old when he died. A beautiful young man. He was really into his running. And so Lloyd had this done for me because it was the same artist who also did a sketch of his son. Get the glare.
oh, those are sketches?
Yeah, those sketches done by the
Wow.
same artist, and this is Matthew.
I
So when I
love that.
saw this, I said, gosh, I'd like to have one of Logan like that. And so Lloyd made that happen. And so we have both of them side by side downstairs in our living room. So we have a lot of their pictures side by, they're there. And to me, it's just not such a lonely feeling because there's Matthew and there's Logan, they're next to each other and we're with each other. So, but again, Lloyd and Ann and some of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my entire life came on my trail, and I call it my grief trail, after Logan died. And the people that I could connect with, and I went into a brand new work world too, and they are great people as well. But just this whole new world, this era, but just looking for those points of light along the way when you think things can't get any worse. Just hanging on for dear life. And usually if there's a light out there, there's always someone out there who can help you. And in the beginning, I didn't want to take that. I couldn't see it. I was just too blind in my grief and in my rage and everything else. But when I was able to, I need help, let me open up to the help out there, because there's a lot of good people out there who will help you through this kind of thing. And Ann Moss was one of the first to shine a light along the trail, to give me a little bit of hope that life can go on, and it can go on. It can go on and not be in complete and utter despair. You can find another purpose in your life after, in my case, Logan was my only child.
Tell me about, and I'm not going to tell this story for you, but about the darkness and specifically the anger part, because a lot of us who lose a child or anyone, anger is part of the grief process. So could you expand on
Okay.
that just a little bit?
Well, as you all probably know, when you have such a catastrophic loss of your child, there's things you didn't know that you were capable of before. Some of them are very redeeming qualities and some of them are not. And with me, it was the more of the not. I started drinking too much, for one thing. Another thing is I just was, there's this grief energy that's in you. And for me, I would trigger easily. So I would say about a month or two, maybe it was before I met you, and I don't remember, but
No, it was when you met me. You told me the
Okay,
story in my
okay.
kitchen.
So I was, you know, I was having dinner with, this is with my former husband, and he said something that triggered me. Not that he, you know, I was just so utterly hyper, super sensitive. I'm not saying it was his fault or anything like that, but it was a very triggering thing. And I remember we had chicken that night and just, you know, mashed potatoes and stuff that can be real messy. And I knew I was going. It's a good thing I didn't have a gun. I said, I really am going to look very calm. I'm going to lose it. You should go upstairs. And he went upstairs and I just tore the whole kitchen apart. So, you know, the plates, like flying saucers, I just, you know, whatever was on the table, was all over the place. Chicken, mashed potatoes, corn. It was a messy kind of meal, just all over the place. That wasn't enough. So I never liked that kitchen table that we had.
Good thing.
And I didn't particularly care for the chairs. It kind of came with the house. It was kind of like IKEA furniture, and I thought, I don't like this shit anyways. And so I tore apart the chairs, tore apart the kitchen table. And then as a testament to my son, Logan, had anger issues, and we had lots of holes in the wall, which never got fixed. I would just put a picture over the hole. So I took one of the table legs and I bashed, you know, the kitchen wall with it. And by that time, I had exhausted myself. It was over. When I saw that hole in the wall, I just laughed and I said, Logan, you thought you could put some impressive holes in the wall. Man, I got one there big time. And it just was so exhausting to do that, but it just was also just, it was a relief to get that energy out of me at the time. And then when the dust finally settled and things got quiet, my ex-husband, he very quietly comes down the steps. I really thought he was going to call the police and have me arrested. He comes down, he peeks around the corner. He says, is it all right? And I felt like, you know, Jack Nicholson from The Shining. And I said, it's all right. You still need to go back upstairs. I got this. I went back upstairs and then I, you know, cleaned up the mess and, you know, trash can was full, kitchen table and chairs and stuff like that. And I went to see a counselor after that, Carla Herbert, who's an amazing grief counselor in the Richmond area. I went to see her after that to tell her what happened, and she just sort of, you know, listened, and she said, you might want to find healthier ways to express your anger. You can't express it that way every time. And I said, well, I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't hit anybody. You know, I didn't do anything like that. So I learned you have to take that somewhere. You know, you just can't sit and just pretend it's not there. Whether it's crying, whether it's whatever, you've got to unleash that energy somehow. And I learned how to do it in a better way through physical stuff, and through writing helped me a whole lot too, just to channel it out in a more productive way.
Tell me about how, what I notice, and what I notice a lot of moms do, or even wives who lose a spouse, is that we kind of adopt ways of our children. Like the first thing I did is I went to the stage, and all of a sudden I felt Charles with me, which is why I like to be on stage. And you went outside and you signed up for boot camp. And I mean, you were doing some butt kicking stuff. I mean, here you were in your 50s and you're like doing all this boot camp stuff for people in their 20s and their 30s. So is that how you kind of took that anger and channeled it into something else?
Yeah, I think I needed to do something with that. And I kind of made up my mind that I wanted to go out west. I had some crazy idea that I was going to take Logan's ashes and go on some crazy hike and go by myself. And because I didn't care if the bears ate me, I didn't really have any fear of any. It's kind of like, Groundhog Day. I just wanted to just do something just with him and me. And I didn't care what was going to happen to me, but I wanted to kind of have an adventure at the same time with it. I needed some kind of outlet to do that. Sitting at home putting scrapbooks together was not, I would have ended up ripping and shredding them. That was not going to do it. I can do stuff like that now. I can do quiet, peaceful things like that now, but I had to take it out in a very physical way. And I was really serious about going on some grand adventure and spreading his ashes, but I was in horrific shape. I couldn't do it. And so I got involved in physical fitness, which is exactly what Logan did when he was going through a hard time. And I didn't really it's interesting that you bring that up, because I didn't really do it because, oh, this is what Logan's going to do. I guess, I did some run. He was a runner and I like to run, but I'm not, I'm not a freak about it. I'm not doing one marathon after another. But I guess it's interesting that worked for him, and it definitely worked for me too. And I would feel his presence, particularly when I would be out in this boot camp thing and we were out at night doing stuff, running around, and I would lay down and look at the stars, because one of the last times Logan and I, when we were together, we were in a absolutely beautiful place and we were laying down on the ground looking at the stars. So that's where I could connect with him.
Lloyd, I felt like as Tamara kind of came in and out like a radio signal, you kind of were this steadfast signal. And once you kind of decided that you wanted to be with Tamara, how did you have faith that that was gonna work out? Or...
I don't know how I had faith that it would work out, but I just, for me, like I said, I just took one step at a time, and I feel like this is what we need to do right now. And, we don't know where it's going to lead, but we're just going to continue our relationship and continue to take that next step. And, at the times we can't see each other, we can at least talk, and we talk a lot.
We did.
More than we would if we were around each other. Because all you got's the phone, and we just talk a lot. And so I just, felt like this was the thing to do. And so I just continued that relationship and continued those next steps.
And were you able to find, so you have this group and that's where you find support, because you're always supporting everyone else.
Well, after Matthew died, my focus was really trying to help my family. And I had a son. Matthew was 18, almost 19. My other son was 17. My daughter was 10. And I was married at the time. And it was 5 weeks later, my mother-in-law suddenly died. So there was so many things were going on. But my biggest initial focus was really trying to be there specifically for Blake. Blake started having some substance abuse, and he's doing well now, but it's been 10 years. It's been a 10-year journey to get him to a rather healthy place. That was a lot of my focus. And then another thing, about a year after Matthew's death, I learned I had a genetic heart defect. And I had to have, in a 13-month period, 3 open heart surgeries, a heart attack, and a stroke.
Oh my gosh.
It was just a crazy time, but that became, that was, in many ways, just a distraction. And you were talking about hiking and not having fear. I remember one time waking up after my second open heart surgery, which was really the worst one. And I made the statement, I'm telling the nurses there about Matthew. And I'm there and I can't hardly move, but I'm like, after you've experienced the death of a child, this is nothing. And I'm hooked up to all these tubes and everything. But yeah, you mentioned I had this group that I had been a part of for about 2 years before Matthew died. it was about 6 pastors in North Carolina. And we meet about 3 or 4 times a year. And sometimes, we'll meet, for day retreats, sometimes overnight retreats. And this is a group that had been with me. They knew me well before this. They knew my struggles. And so I just continued to meet with them, and they were very supportive of me. At times we just kind of gather around and pray with me and pray through it. And so that was a strong piece of support. And then, like I said, I kind of work out other groups that included, having a spiritual director and having a counselor. I always was looking for outlets to talk. Unlike a lot of guys, I can't hold you. I have to find outlets, and I'd have to find an outlet to talk and work through it. And also, I tried to use this as a tool to be able to minister and help people. And I shared about my pain in my sermons, tried to minimize mental health and just struggles that people have. And just tried to, not just go in and talk about myself, but when I was there with people, they knew my pain, they knew what I'd been through. And that gave me, like it gave me credibility with you, it gave me credibility to be able to minister to people.
Tell me about the engagement. And by the way, I do have that on video on Emotionally Naked when he proposed to her. And I meant to have the link here. So while you're telling it, I'm going to look for the link and I'm going to put it in the chat because it's just so sweet.
It was May 10th of last year, so it's just been over a year. And I was up here visiting for a weekend, and it was Mother's Day weekend. And we went, what was the name of the?
Buena Vista.
Buena Vista.
Yeah.
And there was this place that was set up outside. It was like a couch and chair and a lamp, but it was, ceramic, but it was made for you to sit on. And so we set it up, of my camera to take a picture of sitting there. But I had my ring to propose to her, and I wasn't sure when I was going to do it, but I had it with me. And so I set up the camera, and so I was going to just videotape myself proposing to her. So I go over and propose to her. She says yes. We're all excited. I go back, and actually the camera, I just pressed to go into video mode, but not to record. So I'm like, oh no. I said, so I guess we'll have to do this again. So what you got videotaped is the take 2. That's the reason she's laughing so hard, because she knows what's coming. So.
Yeah, and the take 2, he didn't show me the ring, and I said, you need to show me the ring. You need to propose to me.
Well, will you marry me?
Yeah.
And then, so you guys got engaged, and then there was, where are you going to live? And all that back and forth. And then the family stuff. And then Tamara, you had another loss in your family.
Nephew. He was my sister's son. My sister died from complications of smoke inhalation in a house fire. She didn't die in the house fire, but 12 days later she did, and that was in May of 2016. And then Logan died that following July. During this time, my nephew, who was a heroin addict, had lots of issues. I'm dealing with the estate and, making sure he has his needs met. And he was in jail for a long time, actually, which was a blessing because that helped him to get sober, and he was sober for a while, but I do believe he went back into it. Long story with him, but anyways, he's trying to get his life back together, but he was found dead in a parking lot somewhere in New Orleans of a heroin overdose. We believe it was a bad batch, the type with the fentanyl in it and the heroin. And he has a half brother, and I think the next day I was told that he was found dead and he's in New Orleans. He really didn't have any family or anything. He hung out with the transient group and just trying to figure out where he was, where to take him, make the arrangements to get him to a respectable funeral home, had him cremated, and then his remains sent to his half brother. But that happened in September. August or September, and at the time I was healing from a broken leg because I did go on that adventure.
On the hike.
Yeah, and
that was
and I
yeah.
broke my leg during the process. So I'm at home healing from this and just dealing with the death of Chris. And that sort of, even though he wasn't my son, and I hadn't seen him in a while, it just was, I put a special video together for him, which was very healing for me, but it just sort of was kind of going through it all over again, you know, the rawness of it with losing him in such a tragic way.
So you all start making wedding plans and you still haven't decided
Yeah.
where you're gonna live. And you're
Yeah,
like
we
creating
were
a
really
wedding
back
date.
and forth about that, you know, because I mean, she had talked about coming back to Virginia, and initially, I'm not seeing myself moving that far away. I mean, my children still live in Virginia. My parents live in North Carolina, but you know, as we continue down that journey, it just felt like it was the right thing for me to do to come out here.
Yeah, well, Lloyd set a date. So he's very deadline driven. So when he set a date, at first it was going to be February 2nd, and that was going to get kind of crazy. And then it switched to February 8th. And, you know, we were still, you know, he had some jobs and you know, on the back burner. We kind of wanted to see what was going to happen with those. And I said, hey, we can wait until March or April. And he said, no, I'm glad.
Yeah, would have been bad to be
I
separated
know,
right now.
because it's really strange
Uh-huh.
looking at our wedding photos with everybody close together, having festivities and that kind of thing, because you can't do that anymore. So, so the timing of it couldn't be better. We fly out here, and we were able to take a couple of nice Colorado weekends up in the mountains.
Colorado
But
Springs.
but I tell you what, very shortly after that, everything was shut down here, and still is. So, and now I get to work from home, which is great. So we get
Yeah.
to be with each other all the time. Yeah.
Well, I
And so
know
as
that.
far as my church, so the church I was at, I've been at for just over 10 years. I resigned the first Sunday of January, gave a month notice. My last Sunday there was February the 2nd. We got married February 8th. So my last Sunday, it was the following Saturday, we got married at the church that I served for 10 years. And then had a big going away party, if you will, and left the next day and moved to Colorado.
Wow. The emotionally naked love story. And where did it all start? Where did it all start?
Sorry,
right.
Who can't love a story? I mean, really, you know? Tell me about once COVID hit and knowing that Lloyd, you know, has some of these high risk, you know, you've had a lot of grief in your life and you finally find love. Tell me about some of the fear that you've experienced, because it didn't dawn on me right at first until you sent me your setup and you turned down something that I'm like, Tamara wouldn't turn down an opportunity to be on the state task force. And then it dawned on me why you had is I think you wanted to minimize the risk to your husband.
Yeah, in the beginning of this, the governor had a task force set up, and if I wanted to, I could have volunteered for that, which meant that you go to a building, and this was at the part where we're just learning about the dangers of this, and it's still dangerous, but I think we know a lot more about it. And I got to be so protective of our health. I didn't want to do anything that would possibly cause him to be sick or myself, but I just felt like we have a good thing going. I don't want anything to jeopardize it. And Lloyd had an opportunity to be an on-call chaplain for one of the hospitals here. And I was gonna support you on that, but very, very, very reluctantly, because I just was afraid that if he was exposed, he could get sick. And I just, you know, the thought of having to deal with that just was more than I could handle. So
I think it would
Yeah,
be
for
more
me,
than,
you know, I'm looking at different ministry opportunities. I've served as a pastor for the past 30 years. And, you know, I'm looking at possibly serving as a pastor, an associate pastor, doing chaplaincy, either at the hospital or through hospice. And as I was looking at this, I found this opportunity as a chaplain at a hospital, and I was open to it. We weren't sure about it. Like she said, it was early on with the COVID, and they were taking some precautions there, but we still weren't sure. And so Tamara said, you do what you want to do. I don't care. I'll totally support you, but you need to be precautious. And if you do this, we can't share a bedroom. Okay. I turned out that's
That's how you convince a man. Oh, I'll support you. We just won't sleep together.
I have my way.
Oh, that's sneaky.
Do what you want, John. I totally support you, but.
However, that part of me will be closed off. There's a lot of sex talk in this one. Kind of innuendo behind the scenes. Oh, so those sparks are flying. Like, we're going to separate those
I
sparks.
should have shared that. I should have done a lot before that.
That's what this will make. That's what will make this recording popular.
Okay.
So it wasn't faith, it was sex.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what does your next opportunity look like, Lloyd?
I'm really not sure. I'm looking at different options, but we'll just kind of see where it goes.
One of the things we do though is he does Sunday devotionals, and that just has kind of organically evolved. And at first I called it basement devotionals because Lloyd, my basement looked like, something from Silence of the Lambs, but he went down there and made it look really nice and remodeled it on a dime. And so that's where he, when he wants to put his sermons together and where he does
I've got my office.
he's got tons of books and everything. And so so he wanted to start doing these devotionals, so we called them basement devotionals on Sundays. And then lately we've been getting out to different places close to where we live just to show the environment, even though we're really not supposed to be traveling up in the mountains right now because of the COVID restrictions. We still are close to very beautiful scenery here, just within a short walk. And so we started doing those outside and on Sundays, 8 o'clock Eastern time and 10 o'clock Mountain time.
No.
Oh, wait a minute.
8 o'clock Mountain time, 10 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things we do so our Sundays are really special. We sort of scout out what we want to do. I'm mainly the behind the scenes person. We scout out where we can do these on Saturday and kind of spend the day outside, and then we wake up early Sunday and go somewhere, and it's just been really a cool experience of being involved with him in that way.
How does somebody find them?
It's just on my Facebook page, and my Facebook page is open.
Mm-hmm.
But we started it on March the 22nd was the first one that I did. And that one I just kind of put out there, what are your life passages? And I told about scripture passages that were real significant to me. The second one fell on March 29th, which was the 10-year anniversary of Matthew's death. And so I just had to talk about Matthew for that one. And so I shared about Matthew, quite a bit, and just, about, how God helped me work through, his loss. And then we had Palm Sunday and Easter. And then I started a study on the 23rd Psalm. Each week I just do one verse of the 23rd Psalm. This past week was an interesting week as we think of grief. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And I paraphrase that, not just about death, but even though I walk through a deep, dark place, not knowing what's coming next, I will fear no evil, for God is with me. And to me, I compare that also to going through grief, not knowing what's coming next, and the strength that God can give us in the midst of that. And it was Mother's Day. And it was the 1-year anniversary of our engagement. So we shared about that a little bit. And so Tamara came around the camera and I gave her a rose. And she shared some at the end. So.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So,
And this one, it was at a Catholic retreat center that was a short distance away. And we had the mountains in the background and a cross in the background. So that was pretty cool.
Really beautiful. Yeah.
so what I often think about is that a lot of my book club friends are totally freaking out over this whole COVID thing. And at first I was kind of like, it's just another shift, and I've done this before. It does feel very similar to my previous grief journey. I'm losing something, but before I felt isolated and alone. And this time I feel like, well, everybody's in with me.
Yeah.
What are y'all's feelings about that? Does that make you feel more, do you feel like you were more prepared for the emotional part of COVID and the isolation because of what you've been through?
I think it helps that we're together. And I'm very, very thankful that I'm not going through this by myself, because that would have been a whole different level of isolation compared to the solitude I had after Logan died and when I was out here pretty much by myself, because at least I could go visit with my brother and be with people and go to a restaurant and be on the trail. And even though I really wasn't, when I go to a restaurant eating by myself, I wasn't eating with anybody, but at least there are human beings around me. And there's something to be said for that. There's something very, humans need to be connected to others. And so I think my heart goes out to people, especially people who may be in grief right now and they don't have anybody. That would just be a hard thing to go through with this isolation. You can't even get a hug from anybody. You can't even get a physical touch from anyone. And so I am very thankful I have Lloyd with me. And so we're together. So, to me, in our little small world, it's a blessing for us because we get to spend a lot of time with each other. I get to be at home all the time, and I'm very, very blessed and thankful that I have a great job. I have a really good employer, so I can continue working from home, and with everybody in the same, everyone's communicating virtually, and so that's an okay too. So that's helped make things easier for me in my work. But I think because Lloyd and I have each other, it's really been a good time for us.
After being 1,700 miles apart for
Yeah.
most of our relationship, we get married and then we're quarantined together, so we're together all the time now.
And
Extended honeymoon.
especially with that job at the hospital, it would really
I'll try to
put a
turn that
big
down.
barrier between that. So Lloyd,
Yeah.
do you see, how are you keeping up with your family now?
Oh, I talk to my kids every day. Yeah, I stay in touch with them really well. So my daughter just finished her second year at Virginia Tech. Of course, she's this last semester, she's been at home with her mother. And my son, he and his girlfriend live in Chester, and they're doing pretty well.
Okay. So, when you get married later in life, there's junk on both sides. You don't come in with nice, neatly packed suitcases like you do maybe when you're younger. So how do you kind of work through that piece of it, like settling and being okay and getting along with the other members of the family?
Well, I think Lloyd's transition was far more than mine because I was on my own. It was just me. So
Right.
there was no blended family on my end. And so it was, but for him, I think it was challenging.
Well,
yeah.
my parents live in North Carolina, and none of my family like the idea of me moving so far away, but they just saw that I was happy and they were very supportive of me. My sister lives in Midlothian, and she was very happy for me. My son had just seen, what I was going through, and he's been supportive. My daughter, who's 20 years old, she's the one that's having the most difficult time. So, I just try to be supportive of her and just, talk to her and not try to force anything on her, just try to be there for her, as much as I can.
His kids are amazing. I just think the world and love them both, think the world of them and love them both. And sometimes I think I drug him out here, and that's not true. Because I was totally okay to move back to Virginia just so that we could be together. And then we would just kind of figure it out from there. But I think Lloyd kind of felt a calling to come out here for a number of reasons. And it was a really brave move for him to leave his job. And I know it was hard for him to be far away from his kids. I don't know if I wouldn't have been able to do that, but you know, he made some really big decisions, I think. But
It's been crazy in
Yeah.
the midst of this that I can't go back to visit him right now.
yeah.
Because I would have been back to see him some.
Yeah, I just lost my dad, and while it was time and he was suffering and he was in hospice for a good 6 months, and watching him suffer was really horrible. But now I'm facing, you know, I don't get to have the big funeral and talk about my dad, and what's more, I can't hear the stories. And you really only get one opportunity at that where you hear them a lot, and it's the only sanctioned ritual. So I'm trying to think, you know, how can I, you know, create that? And I talked about doing one of these Zoom calls, but my dad was older and a lot of the friends were older, and, you know, getting onto Zoom might be a real fiasco, but I might try it anyway.
I'm sorry, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I love the
thank you.
story you had about your dad. I really enjoyed reading that, and really can see a lot of you in him, and really see, you know, quite the traits that you have, and the humor that he had. And I really enjoyed reading that. So thanks for sharing that with us.
You know, I kept comparing him to Charles, and that's what I've heard a lot of, is I forgot how many traits my dad and I shared. And of course, then Charles also shared, you know, mainly the sense of humor stuff and loving to laugh. So I want everybody, we have about 7 minutes, so I want everybody to have an opportunity to ask a question or make a comment, and you can unmute yourself and, you know, just try to do it one at a time so that, you know, we're not all unmuting at the same time. But that first person who's going to dive in.
I will start talking. This is Jan, and my question would be about when my child.
Janice, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can you repeat that?
What I said was, where would I get a copy of the article where they both wrote, "Where was God when my child died"?
I think if you Google it, I think it's #1 on Google.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
if
sorry.
not, I can send it to you. You can reach out to me directly, Janice, and I can send it to you if you can't find it.
Okay.
I think if you type in "Where was God when my child died," just like that, I think it will be right up there.
And if
Very-
not, add emotionally naked, you'll definitely get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
pretty
Thank
easy.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I look in the statistics, and it's visited daily. I'd say maybe 20 a day read it, but tens of thousands have read it by now.
Very nice.
Yeah.
We
And,
actually had a table at our wedding with pictures of Logan and Matthew, and also my daughter Caitlin, with articles to pass out for people.
and they were all gone, because
They
I was
were.
at the table and I was seeing, well, they have the article and the story that,
Yeah.
you know, I wrote, because I kind of wrote the emotionally naked story as like once upon a time, you know, I did a fairy tale kind of theme because that was the fun way to write it. And a bunch of people went up there and they were all gone. And I mean, you must have made hundreds of copies, and every one of them was gone. So, I mean, everybody loves a love story, right?
Right.
We're all suckers.
True. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have a comment or a question? We have about 4 minutes. Genevieve?
Honey, I just want to tell you I love you. Y'all, I'm from Fayetteville, where Ann Moss is from. And anyway, I love her daddy and her mama. I love you, honey.
Thank you.
And thank you all for sharing your story.
Well, I grew up right down the street in Clinton.
Really? I was going to
Yes.
ask you where you're from.
Did you get my North Carolina accent?
Yes.
That's
I live in
I'm not-
Raleigh.
I'm not the only one with an accent.
right.
Anybody?
I'd just like to say that you all have a beautiful love story that came from such darkness. And it just shows that what Satan meant for bad, God turned it around for glory.
Mhm.
That's from Genesis 50:20. And so many people in this world want to hate. And I'm so thankful that the Lord brought you two together. And it's just a beautiful story. I'm so thankful for you, Anne, and your book and where the Lord is leading you and for this group. It's really beautiful. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. I mean, that, you know, I'll never forget standing in the kitchen when you two met. I mean, it really was. That's a feeling you never forget when it's like when somebody says, I met my, what are they saying? My beloved or my lifetime partner or whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
And I
Right.
mean, that
Yeah,
was
Karen-
it. Go ahead.
Both Karen and Genevieve brought up how God works in this. And so I will have to say, I mean, I was definitely raised as a Baptist ever since I was a little girl, and always a big believer. It did kind of shake my belief a little bit after all this happened for me to, I always believe that God gave us the choice, and sometimes that can be very painful in the bad choices that people can make. And, my son drove his truck recklessly, and probably if he was safer at driving, he would still be alive. So he made that choice that night to drive recklessly, and as a result, he ran into a tree and he died 4 hours or 5 hours later from that. But it was a hard thing. I mean, it's one thing to say that when it happens to somebody else, well, God, things happen for a reason, God's working through. But when it happens to you, you look at it a little bit differently. But I sort of have come around to believe that regardless of what happens to you, God's not going to stop bad things. And things are going to happen. It's just that I think, and I know God is there to help you get through it and to help you grow and to help ease your heart and to help you put one foot in front of the other and to bring hope back into your life. So I think that's what I've learned through all of this as to where God fits into all of this.
And one thing we talked about a lot, we both wouldn't agree that everything happens for a reason, a common thing that people say. But we truly believe that whatever happens, if you give it to God, God can bring something good from it.
I like the way that's a great place to end it. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank
Since
you.
it's been recorded, you'll all automatically get a recording of this because I did auto recording. So you'll see the part where it was messy in the beginning. So you can always fast forward through that. But thank everybody for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Buddy.
Thank you, Anne.
And our next guest that I have on the books is Ryan Hampton. He is a famous author and speaker on addiction, and he tours the United States. And he has agreed to do June 20 something. I'm going to put it out there, and then I'll have something in between. And I haven't decided yet. With the death of my father, I'm going to take the week
Sure.
off
Yeah, you need to take time.
and take a little time with my family. But I will be back with more of these Zoom chats because I get a lot out of them and I get a lot of support from you. So tell at least one person about Diary of a Broken Mind and Emotionally Naked. And I appreciate y'all joining us, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you all.